Hello, everyone. Welcome to Justice Watchers, a series by Defenders Coalition. Defenders Coalition is an organization that works for the safety, security, and protection of human rights defenders. And in this series, we are looking into delving into the lives of human rights defenders who work with marginalized communities, but also make sure that fundamental freedoms are upheld and that communities live in dignity, especially the communities that are in the margins. And for today's episode, we have my friend and superstar, Phelister Abdalla. You will introduce yourself and then we could go to the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, my name's Phelister Abdalla.
Mm-hmm.
I work with the Kenya Sex Workers Alliance as the national coordinator. I am a sex worker from here, Kenya. I am a feminist. I am a human rights defender. And I am sitting on the board of the Global Network of Sex Workers as the president of the board.
See how she says softly, as the president of the board. That's why I call you a superstar, but you play it very, humbly. But you're a superstar in what you do. But before I force you in taking accolades for the work you do, how did you come to do the work you do?
One of the things that I always want people to know, because when people hear sex work, they only see sex for money and they don't look at other things. For me, I'm a sex worker by choice. I love what I do. Maybe when I was coming into sex work, there were so many stories. But now that I am here, I identify myself as a sex worker. I chose to be who I am.
Yes.
There were so many choices for me to do. There were so many works for me to do. I could have been maybe a house help. I could have decided to sell tomatoes at the market. I'm saying selling tomatoes is work, but sex work pays better. And it is a better choice for me as a woman.
And this is a choice that you made for yourself.
Yes.
So when people speak about you or other sex workers, they should not remove agency and autonomy that you have as people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Your work has come to, the broad light, especially people have known you more in the work you do in the conversation around End Femicide, And I would say End Femicide marches and protests, which you and other organizations or actors have done wonderfully in terms of the work you've put in. One, let's touch a little about general the rights of women, and femicide protests, but also how those intersect with the conversation that we are currently having around, sex workers and femicide itself.
For us sex workers, we used to speak about femicide from 2013. I remember in 2013, we went for a march in Thika where a high number of sex workers were being murdered. And we decided to do a march within Thika to demand the government to give us a way forward, and also to call upon the police so that they could be able to record the cases of the sex workers who were being murdered. Because that time the stigma was very high, and nobody really, even the police writing a report about a murder of a sex worker, it was very difficult because themselves, they were like, how? Why? This is a criminalized population. But for me, and the movement of sex workers has come out very strongly. I remember the first case when a sex worker was murdered. It was Bar Hostess which came out, Empowerment and Support Program, and say, hey, listen, sex workers are being murdered. So as sex workers, we've come out to make noise to say we are being killed. Someone is here killing us and is targeting us as women who are into sex work. But at that point, it was a sex workers' business. It was a sex workers' issue. People were not coming out because of the stigma around our work, because of the narrative that people have around our work. So they were not actually looking at the human face of a sex worker or the woman face of a sex worker. They were just looking at sex work and putting it according to...
alienating it from everything else.
Exactly. Not looking at these are women being killed. Let's start having conversation about women who are being killed and those women are into sex work. Let's look at these people as human beings. Let's look at them as Kenyans. And that is a conversation that people never used to have. And we were all over the media houses saying, stop killing us. We are human. Stop killing us. Give us that human face despite the work that we have chosen to do as a community. So the reason why we were also strong in the End Femicide movement, it's the fact that this is an issue that has affected us for long. And when we saw women were coming together, we did not not want to be left behind.
Yes.
Because this is an issue that has been eating our community and is continuing to eat our community. By the time they were reporting there's a case of an MCA daughter who was murdered in Thika. 3 weeks ago, there was a sex worker who was murdered and dumped in Thika. 1 week ago, the sex workers did a demonstration to say, stop killing us sex workers. Kiaswa came out strongly and say, stop killing us. So you see, this is an issue that is happening to us as a community. And by the time we stop looking at us maybe differently and look at us as women like the way we did the march in January, which made a huge difference. When we did the Dark Valentine, it also did a huge difference. And we put femicide as an issue that is affecting women, despite their culture, despite their religion, despite their color.
Type of work.
It does not matter.
Yes.
For as long as they are a human being and there's an issue that is affecting them, can we address it as a human right issue that is affecting a human right or a human being in Kenya?
You've alluded to it, but tell me, what are what we call mainstream women rights organizations missing when they alienate the conversation around women who do sex work, who are in sex work, and other women in terms of the kind of traction that, you know, a dev of, let's say, a student will take. But then when it comes to a sex worker, it's almost relegated to, you know, there's almost a complacency of, but they were in a, you know, they were in business, right? What is the other women rights organizations? What are they missing?
There's this narrative that we use in our community. Good women go to heaven, but bad women go everywhere.
I've been your friend for a while, but I've not had that.
So I'm like, there's this narrative we have, and it is because of the cultures that we've been raised in. It is because of our religion. It is because of this is how a woman should do. This is the kind of a work of a woman should do. There was a time women could not even sit in offices. There was a time women could not speak in front of men. There was a time women could not even go to worship places. Why? Because a woman they were looking at a woman like an object, and women were denied a right to make bodily autonomy. And this is a thing that we've grown up with. So many of us have grown up with. We grew up knowing that this is what our culture is saying and we must follow. And if you don't follow, sometimes you say, you're even going to die. Such things are going to happen to you. As in, you see those threats that people put in people's mind. And because you've grown like that, you come with that narrative, even in your space of work. For me, most of the time I say, women's movement, when they look at us, or other feminist movement, when they look at us, not all of them, they look at us in a savior way. They are coming to save us from ourselves. Save us from our work. These women needs to be saved. They believe that these women are supposed to be like this, sit in proper, be a proper woman, do. One of the things I want it, and this is what has been happening to us. We've been going to women's conference when someone here says, you saying you are a sex worker, they're like, how? How possible? You are the ones who are snatching.
Other alternative?
Exactly. They're just asking the alternative economic opportunities can we provide for you, and all those things. Programs have been there to give us those economic opportunities. Yes, we have, some of us are doing businesses, but also still do sex work at the same time. And that is the reason why I'm saying you can be a lawyer and still own a shop somewhere. And it is the same with us sex workers. And when people are also coming looking at us, they're looking at us in the exploitation way, not knowing that there are women in the industry within this work that we have who are doing this work by choice. We are doing this work because we love it. This is the reason why we are coming out by saying, we want to work with you. Don't give me that look. I will not call you Mundia, maybe the lawyer or the doctor. I will call you by your name, Mundia.
That's true.
Because that is who you are. And that is how we want people to call us by our names. I know I am a sex worker. This is my career. This is my job. This is what I've graduated to do.
So when you say graduated, it's like, some of us
graduated.
Experienced.
Because I am
work experience.
Work experience is putting me at that level. And so I'm like, don't look at me in all those ways. And again, when you're talking about bodily autonomy, I have made a decision on how I want to use my body. Why do you think you can come and make it better for me? Yet you are saying we are empowering women to make bodily autonomies. We are empowering women to make money from their own hands, from their own bodies. I am using a part of my body to earn an income. And what I'm trying to say is, while I'm trying to earn this income, there's an insecurity that is eating me here. Because you are responding to other insecurities for other women, what is making you not to respond to my own insecurity?
Yeah. And so that's the conversation brings us to, you've done incredible work around decriminalization of sex work. Well, let's first talk as where are we with that in Kenya? And then we can talk about, how that relates to broader human rights.
Yeah, so most of the time we sit down and we say, sex work in Kenya is criminalized. Actually, living off the earnings of sex work is what is criminalized in Kenya. And when you're looking, and you're looking at those laws, those are the laws that were made by the colonizers.
Yeah.
And when you compare that law to our new constitution, they do not align. Because we have, as much as our constitution, the one that was made in 2010 will say it's old, but they do not align with the laws that we have on sex work. Because the penal code is the one that is criminalizing the earnings or living off the earnings of sex work. So one of the things that we started as a movement when we come in is making sure that the sex workers understand what is criminalizing you and what is favoring you as a sex worker. So we made the sex workers understand the laws in Kenya. That was the first priority. Because someone would come and say, I'm arresting you or they will arrest you even for no reason. Because most of the time we used to be arrested because of the petty offenses. They would use the petty offenses to accuse us, or the intent of prostitution, or drunkard and disorderly. All these petty offenses are the things that...
And not necessarily...
the law that is there, because even themselves, they do not know
they don't have what to bind you with.
Exactly. Even the law enforcers do not know how to use that law to arrest you with it. So it's making them very complicated. So they're using other ways to come and arrest you. So number one was to make sure that the sex workers are smart. There was a case here in Nairobi years back where the sex workers were arrested, and they were supported by bar hostess, and they went to the court and they said, so they changed to the court and they said, with the intent of prostitution, and they said, yes, we were actually not prostituting, we were doing sex work. Yeah. And then the next thing, now they decided to change the topics by saying, but you did not have national IDs. They said, no, but you did not ask us for the national IDs. Actually, we have our national IDs with us here. So even it was very difficult for the prosecutor, the judge. They were like, how do we articulate this? At the end of the day, they pronounced a win for the sex workers. But again, we sat down and we asked ourselves, what did we win? So it means these people are taking advantage of us because of the fact that we do not understand the law. Themselves do not know how to articulate it and how to implement it in a country. Number two, we have seen the economy of our country. They always tell us, the economy is growing, but are the people growing? They are not. They are telling us, please, Kenyans, be creative. Tengenezeni, make a work with your own hands. Be creative. Look at the talent that you have. Look at... Us as sex workers, we sat down and we looked at this and we know this is working for us. So number two, by making sex workers understand, if you are here, are you here by choice? Is anyone forcing you?
Yes, because there's a conversation about exploitation that is real. You know? Yeah.
And we are not denying that exploitation is not there. But it is not only exploited into the sex work industry. No. Exploitation is happening in across
especially
boards.
In the informal sector, or even generally just workplaces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So But again, as a movement, by making sure that sex workers understand that you are a sex worker by choice. And we are not mobilizing people to be a part of us. No. This is by choice. That's a clear
distinction, because I hear that narrative in many ways,
Yeah, this is by choice. And making sure that the sex workers understand that this is by choice. But number two, do you know your human rights? And there was a time we were making those small notes of know your rights. You'll see sex workers-led organizations doing training in different counties, because in all the counties we have 75 members. If you go to Coast, you'll find Koswa. If you go to the Nyanza, you'll find Kiswa. If you go to Kiambu, you'll find Kiaswa. If you come here in Nairobi, there is bar hostess, there's soap ambassadors. As in, the sex workers-led organizations grew up. So we made sure that our membership was more, where they were growing up and making sure that we have a lot of leaders. And it is not only Phelister and a few founders who are coming out to speak. It is a voice that is coming from different sex workers. Like, for example, in Nakuru, when the sex workers were being murdered, they came out and marched as Nakuru sex workers. The same thing happened to Kiambu just the other day. The same thing happened to Kisumu. The same thing is happening at the Coast. The Coast sex workers went out actually to support and march with the taxi drivers who were marching because of the woman who was murdered, who was a taxi driver. The sex workers joined that march.
And we have to see how this conversation about sex work is not alienated. It's part and parcel of the broader conversations around other human rights violations.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, upon to the decriminalization work is making sure that, do the sex workers understand what is criminalization? What is, when you're talking about decriminalization, what is it?
Yeah.
When we're talking, so we wanted the sex workers we understand what are these legislators. And within all these legislations that we have, which one do we want? And when we understood them very well, we decided what we want is decriminalization of sex work. And that is where we've been doing advocacy. A lot by making sure that all the cases when the sex workers are violated, documentation is happening at a high level. That is number one.
Area,
Paralegals are trained to respond to any cases that are on the ground by different sex workers-led organization, by making sure that they show up in court cases without any excuses. So if there's a support, by making sure that there's a legal support, a lawyer will always be there standing along with the sex worker when they have a case in court.
That's sufficient.
Number two, there was this Martha Koome, they were working on the penal code and they were looking at changing the penal code. And then ours was also touched. There are some of
I remember the news piece,
the news piece. So ours was also touched. So it was not only the sex work part that was being changed. It was a huge part of the penal code. But even us, we are asking ourselves, how do we chip in to make sure that we also use this as an arena, as an opportunity, an arena to do this? But another way of changing a law in Kenya is through going to court.
And challenging
this law. And that is where we are as a sex workers movement. And anytime we will be in court to challenge these laws and ask, this law has been here, this number of sex workers have been killed, this is the number of sex workers. We are trying to put a human face to the cases because the judge is a human being. The lawyers who are going to be there are human beings. Everyone is going to be a human being. So we are going to let a human face of a sex worker being seen there so that we can tell a story within the public interest litigation that we want to do.
I know Defenders Coalition is very keen. This is why we're having this conversation, but it's not every human rights organization that looks at sex workers as a key population or a key movement to talk about human rights. What is a general human rights movement missing when it omits the conversations around, well, just generally women, because women's stories are not foregrounded, but also the conversation around sex work?
Just the myths. Maybe one of the myths I'll say is that many people say sex workers are trafficked.
I actually was reading about it yesterday.
So there's a confliction between sex work and trafficking. And it is the same as I was telling you. Trafficking is happening. We cannot deny as the fact that there's trafficking.
That's true.
Trafficking,
and it happens every day, and the numbers are appalling.
And it's not, women are not only trafficked to the sex work industry. They're trafficked to so many work, to domestic work. Women are brought
and
back
just even modern slavery.
Yes, even modern slavery. Our children are taken to go mining. And all these things. So all sorts. So the reason why people are actually the trafficking conversation is not kicking, it's because people are putting a lot of efforts and to sex workers, to criminalizing sex work. And the answer is decriminalize sex work. And that is where someone will be like, this is my work. It's like any other work.
It also makes it easy for us to tackle exploitation and trafficking because...
Exactly. Because there will be a system.
Yes.
Because sex work will be like any other work. And I'll be like, I'm working. Nobody is going to be ashamed because right now I'm working in the dark. If I go to another country, for example, to work there and I do not have papers and they arrest me, I will actually say I was trafficked so that I can get out of there safe and come back home to my children. So many things are happening because of the structures and policies that we have put in place. Once we address the policy issue and the structures that we have put in place to criminalize some population, then this is actually going to end trafficking in Africa. And we are actually going to get the real cases of trafficking. And we will be addressing them in a real way. Because right now, we're just hiding under structures.
That's true. And blankets policies that are not helpful to either sex workers or other populations that are vulnerable.
Or even the government itself. Because how is that law that is criminalizing me living off my earnings importance to the government? What benefit is it bringing back?
Some of these conversations, I feel like they're proxy conversations. It's not the real thing. It's just the government wanting to answer to either religious compliance or morality of sorts,
So I think the other reason why there's the myths of not engaging sex workers in some of the spaces is because people of just their own religion beliefs.
And religion is a huge thing.
Religion is a huge thing to people. Very, very huge thing. But one of the things I say, for me, I am a Christian. I love being a Christian. And the fact that I'm a Christian, I do not want to associate myself to any house. I only associate myself to God, because the word is very clear about my relationship with God. And having a spiritual relationship, it's very important.
That's true.
The same way, I have never seen God, but I have a lot of faith in him. A lot. And when I go to him, he has never disappointed me. And the words are very clear. Let's not all be judgmental because of the religion that we have or the religion that you belong to. Allow people to be themselves. Because at the end of the day, we only have one judge. You might be here thinking you are living so holy, and maybe you are on the wrong step.
Yeah.
So I think let's be lenient with each other. Let's be respectful with each other's religion. As much as you want me to respect your religion, how do you come back and respect me at the same time? If someone says, my religion does not allow me to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, I respect that.
Yeah.
But if I come here and I tell you, as a sex worker, I have my own religion, and this is how I want to be understood, you can't come back and tell me God hates prostitutes.
Yeah, and you know what? It's how morality, however we understand morality, is used as a legal process, but it also upholds other legal processes, meaning because we think something is not supposed to happen, then we end up making laws that support what we think in morality. And I think that's the thing with the government, as you said, because what business does the government?
But I think also the other large thing for us, again, as Africans, it's the fact that sex is not something that used to be spoken in public. Leave alone people earning money from it.
That's true.
Sex was...
So there's also stigma.
Yes, so there's a lot of stigma around sex itself.
And taboo.
A taboo around sex and pleasure. As in, and this taboo, most of the time, the burden is always heavy on women.
That's true.
It's always heavy on women. As a woman, you're supposed to have sex like this. You're not supposed to have it like this. Yeah. You're supposed to put your leg here. You're not supposed to put it there. Yeah. As in, people have always made these rules for us. People have made ways for us to name and shame ourselves.
That's true.
And I think it is high time, as women, we stand together and say, as much as a sex worker is being named and shamed, I am also being named and shamed in another way.
That's true.
Because femicide is a very good learning. Women have been killed. I want to give an example of the women who were killed in the Airbnbs. People were asking questions of why were they in Airbnbs? Even our fellow women. Women, stop loving money too much.
Yeah.
Women, stop these wababa support. Yeah. Women, stop, as in, nowadays...
The burden of proof is with women.
It's with women. We always allow people to allow us carry that burden. And we name and shame ourselves at the same time.
That's
you
true.
Will see a
and
man...
we don't see how that perpetuates violence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it started by you naming and shaming me as a sex worker. And now you are going to name and shame your fellow woman. And today you are sitting here saying, I am a proper woman, nothing can happen to me. Tomorrow it happens to you in a place where it was not supposed to happen.
That's
People
true.
will still name and in the safe space where you are in. You think you are very safe. Yeah. Nothing is safe anymore. So this is the song. This is a song. I think women should actually be singing this song into their ears and say we are all women, despite our careers, with our marital status, our color, our culture, our religion. That is the solidarity. The solidarity that we saw in January when women came to march because their fellow women were being killed. It doesn't matter whether your family, there was someone who was killed in your family or not. You just felt it and you were like, are we really safe? Yeah. And right now, those cases are actually coming up.
And also we don't realize that it starts, as you said, it usually trickles one woman and then it becomes a thing.
Exactly.
And if you're not in solidarity,
it started with the sex workers and they were like, when they stop selling themselves, exploiting themselves, this will start. Imagine a married woman was murdered in her own marital. It's
also thinking that women do something to earn their murdering, which is a weird way of thinking.
A very weird way of thinking. The issue
is dangerous, actually.
If we are ending GBV, let's end GBV to all the women.
Yes.
If you're talking about sexual and reproductive health rights, let's talk about it to all the women.
Yes.
If you're talking about human rights, women rights defenders, let's talk it to all the women.
Yes.
One of the things I want to say here is I have never felt discriminated in the Defenders Coalition. Never.
And this is why this conversation is very important.
And all the time, there's an insecurity with my community, even if it was not reported by our movement, but they get a case of a sex worker. human rights defender who is at risk, they will write and say, there is case number 1, 2, 3, and 4. What do you think? And we say she's a sex worker. She's at risk. Assist us respond.
Yeah.
Even when our offices were attacked, not once, not twice, have they come to put in CCTV. System hacking, they will come and say, why don't you use this system? Train us and show us the right way. And that is what genuine partnership is all about.
That's true.
It's not about looking at me in a different way, but I am a human rights defender.
In your own rights.
In my own rights, I am a human rights defender. Because at the end of the day, sex workers are human rights defenders. They are responding to cases.
Yeah.
And giving one of us an award, Penina Mwangi, one of us got an award, and that was a huge success for us.
That's
and we
true.
really celebrated that
It also
award.
validated the work that sex workers who are also human rights
defenders do. And we felt validated by this movement. And it is a movement that is away from all the movements that we are used to. But all the time we come for the support. Unless they do not have, and their hands are tied, they will always refer you to the person who can be able to do that. So we have escaped a number of femicide cases because they came in to support. I remember in 2013, after the Thika march, Caroline, Joroge, and I, because we were living in Zimmerman, we took a matatu from Thika to Zimmerman, and we were attacked by touts at the stage because we were all over the news. We were trending, actually. We were really trending because of that march, because of the demo we did and all those things. It was just a phone call away. And when we were there attacked, they were pulling our hairs, fighting us, doing this. Just a car came, pulled us, and we were put in the car. And I told Caro, this is how we are going to be killed. They will not find us anymore. And DK was seated there. Because I didn't know him. And
it turns out
these are the people who had come to save us. And they were like, no, but it is okay. We are Defenders Coalition. We got a request from one person saying that you're in trouble, you had called. This is the reason why we are here, and we are here to give you support. So we got psychosocial support. We were moved from the houses where we are living. Our children were taken to different schools. Imagine that budget if I was going to do it myself. Was I even going to afford it? No.
And it's interesting when you talk about that issue, because one of the issues that we talk about is protection also extends to financial protection during the transitions, or when you are actually vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because sometimes you just feel where you are really unsafe. Whatever you have done, anything we do nowadays, this world is not safe. There are consequences. It puts you at a very bad risk. And you sit down and you're like, when I decided to become a human rights defender, did I really draw a map to see that I'm going to land myself here? Because most of the things we do not think, we move with passion. You are like me, my only thing is I want my community members to be safe. I want the voices of my community to be heard. And this is what I tell people. We started our movements with passion because this was a shoe that was fitting us very well.
Yeah. Tell me, you've spoken about the Defenders Coalition being exceptional in terms of extending protection to sex workers and without, leaving them behind. But it's not common practice. And other organizations perhaps do this or do not do this. But because as we end the conversation, what's your vision in terms of how human rights defenders who are sex workers are brought in the larger conversation, not seen as a periphery that, works with the marginalized community? What's your vision in terms of how, these things work out? Because what happened to you and Caro should be what is happening when sex workers call, right? But that's not what happens. And we know that and that's why either most sex workers who are human rights defenders are also very targeted or at other risks such as economic risks.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I want to say is the fact that even us as a movement, coming out, we also sensitized most of the women's movement because women's and feminist movement, because we really wanted to partner with people. Working in isolation is very lonely.
That's true.
There's nothing as lonely
and
as...
you can't cover all the intersections. No,
you cannot. But there's someone who is doing a perfect work, like, let's say the security work. Defenders Coalition does it perfectly. Why should I do it myself if there's someone who can do that? So those partnerships and building partnership and alliances, we've really done it. And for the people who, and I'm happy to say today, there are women's and feminist movement who speak on the issues of sex workers with passion. They will support us even in tables when we are not there. They will speak about our issues because we have sensitized them. We have taught them our language, and they will speak even when we are not in the room, and we shall feel represented and our issues will go. So one of the things is, I think the table is too big for all of us.
That's true.
The table is too big for all of us. Let's just put our beliefs, aside, our understandings aside, and let's respond to the issues that we genuinely believe are affecting all human beings, all human rights defenders, all women, all feminists.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about feminism, sex workers are feminists too.
That's true.
If you're talking about women, I am a woman. I am a mother.
Yeah.
Despite all these things, I am many things. I am so many things that you can see. Just don't focus on one thing.
That's true.
Yeah. And for that, I'm not trying to say that you looking at me as a sex worker, it's different. No, it's not different.
I mean, it's we have this conversation that I'm not my work. It should also be extended
exactly.
to...
It should also be extended to us as sex workers. I am not my work. I am outside there. There are sex workers who are married. Their
and
wives.
Have beautiful families.
Yes. There are sex workers who are mothers. There are sex workers who... They're even church leaders, they're sex workers, and they want to
I like the way you just whispered, they're just church leaders.
Yeah, because I whisper because the uncomfortability.
Yes.
And they want to live their lives in private, and we respect that. Because of the stigma, you cannot stand as you're standing there and people know what you do at the end of the day. It really hurts. And people really go back, and this has broken families. Sex workers' families have been broken and all those things. So I'll say, let's partner. Let's do this work together. Let's walk this journey together. We've seen how working in isolation is very lonely.
Yeah. It also replicates other vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if we work together as a team, like the way we stood up during the End Femicide, for the first time, even when I stood there, when I said I want to do resources, I volunteered that time, I felt so good because women were coming from different corners to say, Phelister, I have water. Where do I send it? Yeah. Phelister, I have 1,000 shillings. And Phelister, there's this woman who sent me 20 shillings.
Oh.
And I did not call the women who had sent. There were so many women who were even sending 150,000. But I went back to this woman and I called and I said, I received your money. I want to say thank you. And I want you to know that you have contributed to a very good cause. Thank you for supporting your fellow women. And she said, I didn't have anything. Oh. I only saw this number and I thought this is important if I put it in. Someone came with 2 bottles of water, one for herself and another one for another person. They do not know.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of building a movement. That is what building a movement is all about.
That's actually what a movement is.
It's solidarity. It's about you do not have, but what do we use to make sure that this work moves forward? We respond to the issue that is affecting us as a community, as women, as feminists, and that is all that matters.
Yeah. Phelister Abdalla, thank you so much for coming to Justice Watchers. And thank you sincerely for the work you and the End Femicide team did. And I still retain that is what built up to seeing as successful protests as we saw them most recently. So thank you for your work. Thank you for the person you are and how you live out. And thank you for being my friend. And it has been lovely doing this.
And thank you so much
for
having me here. And just to finish, to say that the sex workers always do it better.